one's perfect. Least of all us. We've definitely been guilty of fumbling certain pronunciations over the years. There's just a lot of weird words in this industry, and even though some of these are spoken out loud in several sources, people still prefer to utter their own distinct versions. We ranked these by frequency. There are other words that are more difficult to figure out phonetically, but they don't come up in the global gaming conversation as much as these 10. We're more confident in the correct pronunciation of some of these more than others, but they're all potentially perplexing. The term Ocarina originated in Italy during the late 19th century, as credited to Giuseppe Donati, the man who designed the modern European ocarina. Derived from the Italian word oca, meaning goose, the full term translates to little goose, denoting the instrument's shape. The ocarina can thank the Legend of Zelda series for its resurgence in contemporary popular culture, and also for the emphasis on the ocarina pronunciation, since generally speaking, whether it's ocarina or ocarina depends on which dictionary you ask. There's a case to be made for ocarina, given that the root word oka carries a much longer O sound, and the Japanese box art also uses the katakana character for O. Regardless, Zelda purists seem to swear by the ocarina pronunciation, though nothing is established canon. It's your classic case of you say Deku, I say Deku. Even though the original CD case for Deus Ex featured a dictionary definition and pronunciation guide for the title of the game, it's still common to hear Deus pronounced without that pivotal U sound. Granted, it's not a word that comes up in many conversations unless you're talking about robotic enhancement and branching sci-fi storylines. No one's gonna look at you funny when you say Deus, as in Amadeus, but Deus Ex Machina is a thing, and that's how it's pronounced. Considering the series is gonna be on everyone's minds in the coming months, now might be the time to improve ourselves and get it right every now and then. When Nintendo attempted to take its wildly popular Game Boy series global, its first obstacle was this title, some weird word with a fancy E. Worst of all, everyone had a different way of saying it. Parents and condescending cool kids of course refer to them as Pokemon. In the show's own anime series, despite the opening theme proudly exclaiming the Pokemon pronunciation, protagonist Ash Ketchum couldn't stop talking about how much he loves Pokemon. These issues haven't gone away, but we can easily end this right now. That letter at the end of Beyoncé is also an E with an acute accent, and we all know how to pronounce Beyoncé. It's Pokemon, now and forever. In 1992, Mortal Kombat borrowed the name of a Japanese thunder and lightning god, Raiden, for its own thunder god, but inexplicably introduced him as Raiden. We guess it may have made sense if you're used to saying paid, laid, and braid, but not so much if you're referencing specific Japanese mythology. Raiden was even spelled with an R-A-Y in Mortal Kombat 4, but it was quickly fixed, because let's face it, Ed Boon gets what Ed Boon wants. Metal Gear's Raiden is definitely Raiden, Ninja Gaiden is no question, but officially speaking, Mortal Kombat's Raiden is in fact Raiden. Got it? Suikoden, 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 Suikoden. No one seems totally sure. Well, that is to say, everyone seems totally sure about how they say it, but few agree. Perusing various forums online results in several people who claim to have studied Japanese saying conflicting things. Then someone invariably pipes up to say that the name is based on a Chinese legend. To set the record straight, we reached out to an employee of Konami who informed us that it should sound like Suikoden. Don't drop the E sound and don't draw it out too long. Think chop suey without the chop. So there you have it. Suikoden. It's official. Despite the fact that Final Fantasy X was the first in the series to employ voice actors, none of them actually said the name of the central male character, because you could change it if you wanted to. We didn't actually hear someone refer to him as Titus until his voice actor James Arnold Taylor and Hedy Barres, who voiced Yuna, mentioned him in a taped interview. Further complicating things, the name has been pronounced as Titus in Kingdom Hearts.
Hey, do you feel like going out to the island? Titus and Walk are all wrapped up in their ballgame, and they won't go with me.
Titus is also how the name is commonly spoken everywhere that's not Japan. It's pronounced Tita in the Japanese version of Final Fantasy X, which is the purest reference point, and the Final Fantasy series has settled on that way of saying it.
Me and Titus, we are gonna do a little exploring today.
There was a time when Japanese games reigned supreme and the internet was a far cry from its current ubiquitous state. It turns out when you mix a different culture with a lack of information, mispronunciations run rampant. One of the more frequent blunders heard in schoolyards across America was Ryu, since it's the name of the lead character in Street Fighter and a different character in Ninja Gaiden, two very popular games in the early 90s. Ryu may sound like nails on a chalkboard now, but it didn't seem so outlandish when we were 12 years old and had no concept of Japanese diction. Thankfully, the information age corrected many embarrassing habits, and now we can make Ryu throw fireballs and shurikens guilt-free. The correct pronunciation of the studio that brought us Shadow of the Colossus has evaded some people since the release of the studio's first self-titled game, Ico. And for good reason. English speakers tend to favor Ico. The parent company of Team Ico, Sony Computer Entertainment of Japan, has confirmed that the correct pronunciation is in fact Ico, and refers to the team's long-dormant game The Last Guardian as Trico, confirming the correct pronunciation. Maybe one of their games in the future should say Ico out loud, putting aside this common misconception. But then that would require the studio to release another game. Û're means where in Latin. It doesn't mean anything in French, but the Guillemot brothers called their company Ubisoft when it was founded in 1986. Despite the name being repeated several times each year at their various press conferences and meetings, lots of people call the publisher Ubisoft. They're not German U-boats. It's not the Wii U. If you're stuck on how to pronounce it correctly, remember it starts with the letter U. If you're still stuck in your ways, then remember you'll have to call their social service Û'play, not Uplay. The latter probably makes more sense. We can't remember if people were calling Enix Enix before the publisher merged with Squaresoft, but after the two RPG titans joined forces, the majority of their fans started clinging to this alternate pronunciation. It's become so popular that Squeenix is an acceptable replacement if that third syllable is really holding you back. No matter which way you pronounce it, everyone in the industry is going to know who you're talking about immediately, and employees of the company still pronounce it both ways on occasion. So there will likely never be a push to settle on a single sound. But we say Square Enix, for the record. If you think we still butchered any of these pronunciations, let us know in the comments. Our team of D&D heroes takes on yet another seemingly invincible threat in this week's episode of Tabletop Adventures. And our intrepid dungeon master, Ben Moore, gives us 5 excellent reasons why Heroes of the Storm matters on our second channel, GT Reviews. We'll see you next Friday for another GT Countdown.